everyone, welcome to today's video, which will be my entry for the Fandom February collaboration that some of the costumers are doing. I really liked this idea when I heard of this collab because, as a cosplayer, most of my costumes are fandom related anyway. So I thought this was a good excuse to take one of my older costumes and give you guys a rundown of how I made it. In this case, my Daedric Armour. I think I made this 5 years ago, so it is an older costume now, but this is my very first big armor that I made, and even though it needs some repairs and there are definitely some things I would do differently nowadays, I'm still very proud of this costume. So today I'm going to give you guys a rundown on how I made this costume, what materials I used for it, what the tips and tricks are on how I can put it on and take it off all by myself. Yeah, so without further ado, let's get analyzing. First of all, some info about the entire thing. Most of it is made from worbla. Worbla over a foam, and well, other materials were used as well. I have chains, I have fake leather, and a lot of friendly plastic, which was used to make all of this texture. The upper part of the torso consists of a front breastplate, one entire thing, 2 separate shoulders, and the fake leather flaps attach with Velcro. So these can all be separated as well. Let's take it all apart so we can have a better look at it. This is what all of the armor parts look like when they're laid down on the floor in a somewhat top to bottom order. There are actually quite a lot of parts to this armor. So let's take a closer look at some of them. Here we are with the biggest pieces of the armor, which is the front and the back, and the corresponding fake leather flaps. When starting this armor, I started with the torso, because, well, that is the biggest part. I made a duct tape dummy of myself, and on that I patterned everything out. I think I started with this bottom part, because I loved this part, and this is one of the reasons why I really wanted to make this armor. All these overlapping plates. I just love the design of this. So to show you how I put everything together, I'm also going to show you the back, which is rather ugly, but you know, not a lot of people are going to see this, except all of you guys right now. And here you can sort of see how I constructed the entire thing. As I already said, this was my very first big armor, and it was, I think, my second worbla project in total, and my first worbla project where I decided to use foam as backing instead of just using a single or double layer of worbla, because that will get wobbly quite fast. So I had my foam, I had my worbla pieces, and I individually covered every piece of foam with a piece of worbla, and then stuck everything together. And in the end, I grabbed a rather cheap string of lights. These lights were already originally red, so I just glued these in with hot glue, and the on and off switch is here. So I can just turn it on and off. The bottom things are just foam packed with friendly plastic because they need to be slightly flexible to be able for me to sit. So that's why I did it in that way. Well, same goes for the back, and because I did not spray paint that silver, you can see a bit clearer how I put the worbla over the foam. And the bottom flaps just attach with a really big piece of Velcro. The way that the front and the back go together, we have this really big piece that I can just pull over my head, and that, let's see if I can show it clearer. And these two pieces just slot into place. And then we have just 2 snap buttons that I can snap together. And with my body in here, that's nice and secure. I also added 2 D-rings on the sides of the back. And this is where the shoulder attaches. I will show you guys that later. Something I am still very proud of this armor is the way that all these runes or symbols turned out. what I did was I put another layer of foam on top of the first layer of foam in the shape of these symbols. I put a single plate of worbla over this, heated it up, and with a sort of sharp tool pushed everything down again. Because worbla is quite stretchy, you can just stretch it over all these symbols and then you get this nice, well, this quite nice effect, if I may say so myself. What's also a good thing to mention at this moment is all of these rivets are actually friendly plastic. There are 1 or 2 pellets of friendly plastic molded together and just stuck on there, slightly tapped so that they aren't completely round, but the top is slightly dented, and just painted like the rest of the armor. You might also notice the velcro strips on the back and the front here. That's also another thing for attachment of the shoulders. And I also quite like how this symbol came out. It's all just worbla. This is clayed worbla, and this is just a single layer of worbla put on here and then painted like the rest. The shoulder parts are one of those things that if I would redo the armor, I would completely do the shoulders a different way, because in the game they're quite big and they take up a lot of volume, and I find my shoulders turn out a bit flat. But what I did is I used worbla over foam. I built up with the first layer, which is this part, and I just put another piece of worbla on top and then put on the spikes. The way these are attached to the armor is with another small velcro strip that goes into the D-rings and the 2 velcro strips that go on the front and the back of the armor. And that's the way it attaches. The plates are simply attached with a piece that I salvaged from an old backpack. They have a small loop in here through which I put a piece of worbla, and worbla is strong enough to just hold that on. And also there's a small elastic band that I can put around the top of my arm so that it won't completely flap everywhere and just stay in place a bit. Again, these are all covered with friendly plastic. All of this texture is friendly plastic pellets. Just heated up, smooshed on top of the worbla, and clayed until they got some sort of nice texture. Under the upper arms we get up, of course, the underarms and the hands. The underarms are again a tube of multiple worbla plates with multiple worbla protrusions all stuck together. Because I have quite small hands and wrists, I don't need any form of opening, because I can just stick my arm in here and this will fit just like that. Something I did notice with these very spiky bits is, well, the tip has the tendency to break off, so I will have to repair this someday again. For now, I'm quite happy with how these underarms turned out, because they do have the right volume and bulk. And I'm also really happy with these symbols that are on multiple parts of the armor, which is rather simple actually to make. I just grabbed the soldering iron and I burned these into the worbla directly. It starts to smell really nice of wood when you do that, because, well, worbla is sawdust basically in plastic. So you're almost burning all of the wood. So yeah, I'm also really happy with these parts, especially with the little bits of weathering that I painted on here. I think they get a nice sort of dimension, and it really works to sell the idea that this is metal. The hands are always a funny bit because, well, they still need to be moving, but you still want to cover up as much area as you can. What I usually do is I trace my hand on a piece of paper and I cut 2 of them out of, well, a very stretchy fabric. I just sew them together and I've got my hand. And on that I just glued all of these worbla parts. So that's what my hands look like. I think, again, if I were to remake this armor, the hands would be done slightly different, mostly so that more area is covered instead of having all of these gaps here. Although I must say, if you look at the photos, it works quite well. And this way you can still make use of your hands. I mean, you have rather long nails, which are great for scratching your nose. But I can still grab a cup and anything and actually feel what I'm touching, which is always a nice thing to have in cosplays, because if you're unable to grab a cup and drink, that's not good. So yeah, the fingernails are actually a single layer of worbla, which is something that I don't do all that often, although they do have a tiny reinforcement strip in the middle. A single layer of worbla, especially if you have something that sees a lot of wear and tear, it will break quite quickly. As you can also see, the tip of my nail is rather bent and this will probably break off soon. So that's it for the hands. One other thing I quite like about them is the noise they make. It just feels great. Then going down the legs, we have the shins, the lower parts of the shins and the feet. As you can see, these are in dire need of a new paint coat, but that will happen whenever I get to wear it again. I must say the shins are probably the piece that I am most proud of this entire armor, because it works. The idea how to put them on is this ring is solid. So this I will have to fit over my foot. But I can take this off. And what I'm left with is a shin part with actual functioning clasps, fully made out of worbla. So it's a D-ring that just hooks into a double layer of worbla hook. So I can push these together, just open them up, and then it opens up far enough that I can put my foot through and just put them on, close the clasps, and I've got my shins on. So yeah, and also in the way it looks, I'm really happy with how these turned out. Again, I used a soldering iron to burn in these marks. I used friendly plastic for this texture, and especially on these parts, I love how the texture turned out. It really works as the Daedric Armour kind of texture. So yeah, that's it for the shins. These spikes were also pretty fun to make, and it's pretty fun to walk around with them, although you do get caught on some things. When I have the shins on, I can pull this ring over my foot and slide them in here. This part can nicely attach in front of here, and on the other side, this edge lines up against that edge, so you know when you've got it on correctly because it just slides in nicely. And once that is on, usually I already have this over my shoe, so I put this and the shoe on together. I do have some elastic bands here that just go under the underside of my shoe. Elastic is strong enough that you can walk on it, so I don't have any fears that this will come loose. And that is just to make sure that this is actually stuck to my shoe instead of just flopping all over. So yeah, I think that's it for going from top to bottom. Oh wait, we haven't had the top yet. Last but not least, the helmet. Even though there are a lot of things I would have done differently on this if I would make it again, helmets are really not my strong point. I am very happy with how it turned out, and it is nice and spiky, which is exactly what you want for a Daedric armor. So again, this is all worbla over foam with added texture by friendly plastic. It looks horrible on the inside, but it does show pretty well how it's put together. And I took an old bit of stocking, which if you stretch it, you can actually see through it quite well from the inside. But from the outside looking in, you don't see my face. Again, all of the rivets are friendly plastic. And the spikes were made by taking aluminum foil, shaping them in the sort of general shape of the horns. Then grabbing all my scraps of worbla, trying to cover all of the aluminum foil, then sticking it to the helmet, and then covering it again in friendly plastic and putting the texture in. And you can see some of these tips are also in a dire need of a new paint job, but that's something that, well, has to be done sometime once I get to wear it again. Yeah, so that's it for the basic breakdown of the armor. Let me now show you how I actually put it on. one more rather big part of this armor that I haven't talked about, which is of course the axe. I'm still really proud of this prop. Yeah, I think it's a cool thing, especially with the light and everything. I figured with a spiky armor comes a spiky weapon, and I'm not too fond of the design of the Daedric swords and daggers, so that's why I decided to go for the axe. This axe has a wooden dowel and is 2 layers of a centimeter thick foam, with on that additional layers where needed. Again, the same kind of light that is in the armor is added in the axe, with on one side I have a compartment that you can open up to add in the batteries, and on the other side there is a compartment that you can open up for the on and off switch. Let's see, like that. The glow on the axe is made by having the translucent worbla pellets mixed with a tiny bit of red paint and then cut into shape of these, well, windows almost. Because the light that is in this one is not red. I painted all the lights red here, and well, this is of course red because of the worbla. Again, all of the rivets on here are friendly plastic. All these decorations are foam. All this texture is again friendly plastic. And for the handle, this is rope covered with a, I don't know the name of the material anymore, but it's a sort of glue paint kind of stuff that hardens out a lot if it dries. So I wrapped it in rope and I just painted it with that stuff. Yeah, all in all, I'm really happy with this axe. Again, this one also needs some repairs at some points. I mean, the paint has chipped off quite a few of these parts, but all in all, I'm still really happy with this prop, and just walking around with it, especially because it has some weight, it feels really epic. So I guess that's it for my walkthrough of my Skyrim Daedric armor. I hope you liked it. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them. I'm still in love with this build, and of course I know everything about how I build it. So if you have any more questions, do not hesitate to ask them. I'd love to answer them. So I hope you enjoyed my entry into Fandom February, and I will link the playlist down below so you can check out all of the other entries by other costumers on Fandom February. I hope you enjoyed watching. See you guys next time.